You know the moment? It happens about a minute and a half into the song. The whole thing has been simmering. A simple bass line walks up and down. Finger snaps keep the time. There's nothing else. No drums, no guitar, no piano, just bass, snaps, and that voice. The voice is cool, confident. It tells you a story. It tells you about love, the kind of love that makes you sick. The good kind is sick. And then everything changes. The voice, which has been singing, suddenly drops. It becomes a breath, a secret. It leans right into your ear and whispers a history lesson. A little story about a famous captain and a Native American princess. It's the most important part of the song. It's the part everyone remembers. It's the part everyone waits for. And he whispers it. Why? Why would a singer, the most famous singer in the world, take the central idea of his song and deliver it in a whisper? A whisper is the opposite of singing. It has no melody, it has no power in the traditional sense. A rock and roll singer is supposed to shout, to scream, to push his voice to the limit. That's what made him famous in the first place. That raw, untamed energy. The sound that scared parents and made teenagers feel alive. So why the whisper? It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a mistake in the studio. It was a choice. A deliberate, calculated, and brilliant choice. And to understand it, you have to understand where he was in his life. You have to understand what was happening to him and what was happening to the world around him. Let's go back a few years. Before this song. Before the army. Before the movies. The man who recorded this song was, at one time, the most dangerous man in America. That's what people said. Anyway, he moved his hips in a way that felt illegal. He sang with a voice that was too black for some, too country for others, and too sexual for almost everyone in charge. He was pure, raw energy. A lightning bolt. He recorded his first songs in a small studio in Memphis. The recordings were simple. Just him, a guitarist, and a bassist. They were finding a new sound. A sound that blended blues and country and gospel into something explosive. His voice on those early records is a wild thing. It cracks, it hiccups, it pleads, and it snarls. He wasn't holding anything back. He was giving you everything he had on every single take. And it worked. The world caught on fire. He became a star. Not just a star. It's a phenomenon. Something people had never seen before. The crowd screamed so loud you could barely hear the music. They chased his car down the street. The establishment was terrified of him. They thought he was corrupting the youth. The television shows would only film him from the waist up. They wanted to hide the part of him that was so dangerous. They wanted to control him. And for a while, it seemed like they couldn't. He was too big, too powerful. He was the king of a new kind of music, rock and roll. A music built on volume and rebellion. It was loud, it was fast, it was defiant. There was no room for a whisper in that world. A whisper would have been drowned out by the screaming. It would have been a sign of weakness. Then, everything stopped. He got a letter from the US government. He was drafted into the army. At the absolute peak of his fame, he had to trade his gold jacket for an army uniform. He had to cut his famous hair. He had to become a regular guy, Private Presley. For 2 years, he was gone. The world he left was not the same world he came back to. And he was not the same man. The army had changed him, it disciplined him, it matured him. Or at least, that was the public story. The wild rebel had been tamed, he had served his country. He was a good boy now. His manager, a shrewd and controlling man, saw this as an opportunity. The original rock and roll rebel was a powerful brand, but it had a limited shelf life. How long can you be a rebel? His manager wanted something bigger, something more lasting. He wanted to turn the singer into an all-around entertainer, a movie star, a family-friendly icon, a man who could sing rock and roll but also ballads, gospel, and pop, a man who could appeal to the teenagers but also to their parents. This was the plan, to smooth off the rough edges, to make him safe. So when he came back from the army, the music started to change. It was more polished, the productions were bigger, there were strings and background singers. The raw, wild energy of those first recordings was still there, sometimes. But it was more controlled, more refined. He was no longer just a kid in a Memphis studio, crashing his way through a song. He was a professional, a superstar. And this is the exact moment in time where our song exists. It was recorded shortly after his return. It was part of this great rebranding. He needed to show the world that he was more than just a hip-shaking kid. He had to prove he could be sophisticated. He had to prove he could be cool. Think about the song itself. It's the definition of cool. It's minimalist. It's sparse. The walking bass line gives it a jazzy feel. It's not a loud, driving rock song. It's a slow burn. It creates a mood. It builds tension with almost nothing. The finger snaps are the only percussion. They feel intimate, like someone is snapping right next to you. This kind of arrangement creates a lot of empty space, and in music, empty space is a powerful thing. It draws the listener in. It makes you lean closer, it makes every sound matter more. But the singer's voice is completely exposed, there's nothing to hide behind, every breath, every nuance is right there in the open. Singing a song like this required a different kind of skill than his early rock and roll hits. He couldn't just rely on raw power and energy. He had to use control. He had to be subtle. He had to act. And that's what he did. His performance is a masterpiece of control. He's not shouting about his condition, he's calmly explaining it. He's telling you how it feels with a confident, almost detached coolness. Which brings us back to the whisper. In this quiet, sparse, and cool landscape, a whisper is not a sign of weakness. It's a show of ultimate power. Imagine you're in a room full of people shouting. The only way to be heard is to shout louder than everyone else. That's one kind of power. But now imagine you're in a quiet room. Everyone is listening to you speak. If you suddenly drop your voice to a whisper, what happens? Everyone leans in. Everyone holds their breath. They strain to hear you. In that moment, you have complete control. You own the room. The quietest sound has become the most powerful sound. This is what he does in the song. He has our full attention. The bass line has mesmerized us. The finger snaps have put us in a trance. His cool, smooth voice has drawn us in. And then he pulls us in even closer. He drops the singing. He delivers the key information, the historical precedent for this feeling, as a shared secret. It's an act of incredible intimacy. A song on a record is a piece of mass media. You know, it's made for millions of people. But a whisper is not for millions, a whisper is for one person. When he whispers that line, he's not singing to a crowd anymore. He is singing to you. And only you. It breaks the barrier between the performer and the listener. It feels personal, it feels private. He's telling you a secret that no one else is supposed to hear. In a world of screaming fans and public spectacle, this was a moment of pure, direct connection. And of course, it's incredibly seductive. This was a man whose sexuality had been a source of national controversy. They wouldn't show his legs on television, but there was no rule against whispering. You can't censor a tone of voice. The whisper bypasses all of that. It's more suggestive than any dance move. It's the sound of the bedroom. It's the sound of secrets told in the dark. The words themselves are just a story about history. But the way he says them, the way he breathes them into the microphone, it's pure seduction. He's taking a piece of public history and turning it into a private, sensual moment. It was a way for the rebel to still be a rebel, but in a new way, a smarter way. He couldn't shake his hips on the record, but he could use his voice to create the same feeling. A feeling of something forbidden, something exciting, something dangerous. The old danger was loud and obvious. The new danger was quiet and subtle. It was the danger of a confident man who knew exactly what he was doing. It also showed his genius as a performer. A lesser singer would have belted that line out. They would have made it the loud climax of the song. He understood that the real climax was the quietest moment. It was a theatrical choice. It was pure showmanship. It's the moment that makes the song unforgettable. Okay? It's a hook made of air. Think about the specific lines he whispers. Captain Smith and Pocahontas had a very mad affair. And later, Romeo and Juliet, they had a love disease. He's taking these epic, almost mythical stories of love and passion, and he's reducing them to gossip. The whisper makes it sound like he's passing on a rumor, a piece of secret knowledge. It connects the listener's own personal feelings of love or lust to these grand historical figures. It makes the feeling seem timeless, universal, as if this burning condition he's singing about has been around forever, a secret shared by everyone from Juliet to you. This choice was also a brilliant career move. It announced to the world that he was not just a one-trick pony. He wasn't just the kid who sang about blue suede shoes, he was a sophisticated vocalist, an interpreter of songs. He could be subtle, he could be nuanced, he could be jazzy. He could be cool. This one whispered line did more to change his public image than a dozen interviews. It proved he could grow up, it proved he could evolve, it laid the groundwork for the next phase of his career. The movies in Hollywood, the big ballads, the shows in Las Vegas. In those Vegas shows, he would become a master of stagecraft. He knew how to work a crowd. He knew when to be loud and when to be quiet. He knew how to create a moment. And that instinct, that perfect sense of theatrical timing, is on full display here, on this recording. The whisper was a preview of the master showman he was becoming. So, why did he whisper? He whispered to create intimacy, to make a record for millions feel like a secret for one. He whispered to be seductive, to get around the censors and communicate a raw, adult sexuality with just his breath. He whispered to show power, to prove that true control doesn't come from being the loudest one in the room, but from being the one everyone leans in to hear. He whispered to be a great storyteller, to turn historical legends into hushed gossip, making them more immediate and personal. And he whispered to redefine himself, to signal a change from the wild rock and roll rebel into a mature, sophisticated entertainer with a wider range and a deeper artistry. It was not a sign of weakness, it was a sign of immense confidence, the confidence of a man who knew he had the world in the palm of his hand. A man who knew he didn't need to shout to be heard. All he had to do was get very quiet, lean into the microphone, and share a secret. It was one of the most intelligent, effective, and memorable decisions in music history. A perfect choice for the song, for the moment, and for the man. And it's why, all these years later, we still get chills when Elvis whispers in the song, "Feather."